Good morning. Welcome to the morning market briefing. Today is Tuesday, July 28th, 2026. I hope you are doing well. It's been a very busy couple of days for us, and it will continue to be so. So we're just getting started, as they say. We're going to talk a little bit about the Fed. There's a big Fed meeting going on that starts today, and we will have the press conference and announcement tomorrow at 2 p.m., the press conference to follow at 2:30. Tom, I want to kick off with this because there was an article in the Wall Street Journal. There was also one in the New York Times the day before, but it seems like Timiraos has different sources for his information now than he had before. Or maybe it's the same sources of information, but he certainly doesn't have information coming from Kevin Warsh. What he does have is information coming from Jay Powell and Christopher Waller.
And probably Lisa Cook.
Because none of the profiling of Kevin Warsh in his new leadership role at the Fed was very positive in his article, big expose article that he had last night, basically saying, and I'll quote this, on the evening of June 15th, before the first day of the first policy meeting, Kevin Warsh sat down to dinner with the 18 officials who also set interest rates. He announced his plan to have the 5 panels of outside experts, which he now calls these task forces. These task forces, again, just a reminder, are going to be on communications, the inflation framework, asset holdings, the data and the integrity of the data they use, and the overall AI impact on productivity and jobs. And he was challenged in that dinner. And maybe this is the family fight that he was referring to when in his press conference and in later communications. But apparently Christopher Waller, who was one of the 4 final contenders to win the chairman job along with Rick Reeder and Kevin Warsh and Mickey Bowman, apparently he said that what's the point of all this? Tell me who you're putting on those jobs, he said, and I'll tell you what they'll say. Basically saying, you know nothing. I've been here longer than you. I know everyone who's in it. We've looked at this. We've turned it over many times. We don't need your new ideas, which was a little bit surprising to me coming from Waller, because I thought Waller was always a little bit more
subdued.
Open, yeah, and also open to different thinking. But this clearly suggests he's extremely closed-minded, like many on the Fed are, which only suggests to me that this is very much overdue and very much needed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like, it's like any job. You've worked at a job for a long time. It's pretty chill. You don't have to work that hard. There's pretty low expectations because you're so beautifully independent. And then, you know, a new outside manager comes in and he wants to increase productivity and kick the tires on everything and suddenly be like, hey, there's a lot of value in this business if we operate it correctly. Let's roll our sleeves up and see what those levers are that we can pull. I imagine that, not unlike a normal business, people are kind of like, oh, God, I don't want to do this. So it was all very chill before. Now I have to work.
And in a normal business, those people would be fired.
Yeah, but these people are beautifully independent. They can't be fired, apparently, according to the Supreme Court. And I think this is what happens. I mean, it's like anytime, I mean, you know, I've worked some dead end jobs. You know, you work at Starbucks, they change the store manager, and you got some kid who just, you know, graduated and got the job and wants to come in and be like,
took a management class.
Yeah, we need to be like, man, we got to sell a muffin with every single cup of coffee. So every single time you answer the drive-thru, you've got to ask if they want a muffin. And I think everyone in the world would agree that sucks when you roll into the drive-thru and you're like, hey, let me get a coffee. And they're like, do you want to try a muffin? You're like, no. They're like, we got a new pumpkin spice BS. And you're like, no, thanks. And they're like, is that it for you? And you're like, yeah. And it's like, this could have been a 9-second interaction, but instead it's a 4-minute interaction where they're asking you for all these attachments, as they call them, you know, the upselling. And it's like, sure, you might sell a couple more muffins, but the experience starts to drag. But I mean, I think at least you're trying something. And there's a lot of, I mean, that's the name of the game, is ultimately Starbucks is going to want you to do that. They're going to want you to ask about the muffin because that drives business. And unfortunately for these people, they're going to have to start asking, have we just been doing nothing for the last 20 years and driving the economy into a mass inflation situation with unsustainably high now interest rates boom before we had unsustainably low interest rates. So I think it's good, but I think there's going to be a lot of pushback. People don't like that kind of stuff. Inertia is inertia, whether it's actual physical force or people moving through space.
As we've talked about this, a lot of these people have had long careers. The only way they get out of it is, they'll finish their term, or I guess they can resign. Do you anticipate any resignations, or do you think that they'll stick on under this kind of umbrella of we've got to be the team. I've got to finish out the term.
I think it's more of a you're going to get Nick Timiraos is going to glom onto you and try and make you a superstar. Your diary is going to be full of the Wall Street Journal loves me. I'm the most famous Fed chair in the whole world. As we've seen with other corporate or other government jobs over the last couple of days, where this leads to book sales, this leads to adulation in the New York Times. There are people who think that Lisa Cook is a bastion of I don't even know, like integrity and she's a shining star on a hill, when in reality she stinks at her job and she's probably a criminal, based on just the obvious data. But because she's fighting the good fight for Fed independence and keeping her job, which she's very bad at and probably breaking the laws doing from a position of power, she's suddenly a hero in the eyes of Nick Timiraos. And I think that there are people who would like that, because in the age of influencers, people knowing your name has economic value. And so I think there's going to be a lot more of that than there will be. I mean, Jay Powell has the ability to become the next Fauci. He's sort of like baby Fauci, where he's like, look at me, I'm such a hero. Look at the Trump is yelling at me and belittling me in public, so I must be doing the right thing and fighting the good fight. When in reality, he just kind of sucked at his job. And that's how the world works now. There are plenty of people, Kim Kardashian, you name it, who have become famous for things that aren't really great things to be famous for. But the more people know your name and know who you are, the more money you can make.
It's very true. I'm curious to see how it ends up going. I think that in terms of, has anyone improved their standing over the last 6 months at the Fed, I really can't think of anyone. The one in California, I forget her name, but she was in charge of bank supervision and
daily.
And they're starting to dig up Silicon Valley Bank stuff again, and Lisa Cook certainly hasn't helped her cause. Chris Waller, with this kind of leak, has not helped his cause. I mean, frankly, like maybe Powell kind of playing ball, but then you also have, I'm sure he's been leaking to Nick Timiraos. I mean, maybe just Michelle Bowman.
Yeah, I think she's done the best job of.
Yeah.
It seems to me that she's actually very capable, extremely capable.
Well, she's actually doing something. She's working on the bank regulation piece of it. I mean, I think that none of them actually have a project they're working on. They're just sitting in the cheap seats and shouting.
Clipping a paycheck.
Yep. Trump is, I just want to make a quick announcement on this. He has a meeting with Zelensky at 9:30. Apparently he is warming to Zelensky based on the gains that they're showing in their war with Russia. He has a meeting, and that's at 9:30. And he goes right from that into a meeting with Bibi Netanyahu at 11, who is coming. So there was talk that he wasn't going to meet with Netanyahu, didn't want to meet with Netanyahu, but it looks like they're going to meet at 11, and then he's going to Lindsey Graham's funeral at 2 p.m. today. So a very busy day for the president. I wouldn't be surprised to hear from him. We have had some news overnight that Iran is talking to the Omanis and the Saudis about opening up the Strait of Hormuz. WTI oil is back down to 80. That was almost as high as 90 just about 48 hours ago. Brent oil is down to the mid-80s. So that's good for U.S. stocks. Oil down, stocks up. Nasdaq is down, but that's mostly chip stocks. If you look at underlying like Dow companies, for example, Dow's up. Rates are down a couple of basis points as well. So there's a lot going on in the world of markets, and I would anticipate we hear a lot of macro chatter over the next day, certainly the next 2 days when Kevin Warsh comes out. Tom, on that front, do you think that earnings are going to be able to outweigh what we're seeing from in Washington, or do you think Washington's going to kind of drive the boat over the next 48 hours?
I think it's going to be extremely splintered, as it has been. The wet blanket is on oil today. It's on chip stocks. So the Anthropic basket is getting whacked. So thankfully, knock on wood, it's early in the day. It's not on us, and it wasn't on us yesterday. But I think that, to your point yesterday, I think that there's going to be some nuance in each of the tech earnings that, if you told me that each one of the Mag 7 could be plus or minus 10% after reporting earnings, and the weighting of those in your portfolio is going to be really crucial, I would say that's probably the most important thing. CapEx is going to drive the boat. New announcements of either debt or equity are going to drive the boat, and they could push them all in different directions. But if one, I think my guess would be Meta is going to be the one that's going to do it, because Zuck is, he's a killer. You could have one be up 10% while the rest are all down 5%, or vice versa. And so there's going to be a lot of nuance. But I think we're seeing stuff that the underlying businesses on some of these non-Mag 7, non-everyday headline companies has been strong enough that I think that you're starting to see really, yesterday, if you didn't own a ton of chip stocks, like, you were probably up 50 basis points for the day and the market was not. And so you're seeing things like this morning, UPS, it seems like their turnaround is really starting to work.
UPS is turning around. Oshkosh is turning around. Oshkosh makes a lot of access equipment, so think things like lifts and aerial lifts in warehouses and that sort of thing. UPS, if we're just looking at volume here, next day, or just total U.S. domestic volume, we went from -12 to -11 to -8 to -3. And not only that, but pricing continues to be pretty solid. It's right in the high single digits. Some of that is Amazon's low margin, high volume packages have rolled off now, and so you have easier comparison periods. But overall, they're telling a good story, and UPS is back to $115 a share. Sherwin-Williams came out. Sherwin-Williams has been they tried to throw a wet blanket on what was going on, but you can't really, because they raised guidance by so much. And they're seeing so much acceleration in their underlying business. If you look at the commercial space, for example, they posted their highest comp for the last 4 years in the commercial space. Even new residential construction up low single digits, residential repaint up mid-single digits. The performance coating business, general industrial demand up high single digits. That's really good news for GDP. But they say, we're not anticipating any material improvement in industrial production. We think that GDP is going to continue to remain uncertain. And even he can't talk down the stock. The stock's up 6% pre-market. Illinois Tool Works also reported earnings. They're up 2%. I think they maybe should be up more. But this is probably the most impactful from a U.S. economic activity standpoint. If we look at welding demand, so Illinois Tool Works provides equipment for industrial uses. So whether that's food equipment, automotive equipment, construction products, basically they saw acceleration across the entire business. They went from a 0 comp to a 5 comp, 0.4 to 4.5 in a quarter. And welding went from +6 to +14. Test and measurement and electronics went from +5 to +10. Construction products had been negative since 2022. They just posted a +2 comp. Really, really remarkable improvement. They raised top and bottom line guidance for the full year. So we're really seeing some strength, frankly, in the industrial side of the economy. And we talked about the transports, the rails, the UPSs of the world. Now we're seeing it in orders for actual capital equipment to make stuff. And again, this is something that we thought would never come back to the United States. We were told it would never come back to the United States and we should just give up, and that's reversed. I hope it's not just a 1-quarter phenomenon, but the thing with this is that these tend not to be 1-quarter phenomenons because they're long-term decisions about reinvesting into your business that aren't made on a whim, which is why they've been down so long. But it also means that when they start to go positive, you should experience a stronger, longer period of growth.
I mean, I feel like they're one of the old backbone of the portfolio companies. They're a dividend aristocrat. They used to be a holding that everybody had 15 years ago, but they just got left in the dust, really starting with the Obama administration and with the rise of the Mag 7. But this used to be an absolute stalwart of portfolios. I mean, they used to grind along, make money, pay a higher dividend every year for 25 years or more. I mean, that's the dividend aristocrat playbook. And I think that's a piece of what's happening in the underlying economy as we start to repatriate a lot of this manufacturing. Is like some of these companies are going to suddenly be prominent again. Think of like Dover or Emerson Electric or some of these just industrial conglomerates that no one thinks about, but they own everything. I mean, Illinois Toolworks owns like Hobart, which makes like meat slicers. They own like a ton of just like valve and gas pressurized, all those thermometers and all those things that go into building stuff.
It's like if you know.
Yeah.
But if you don't actually interact, you'll have no idea they exist until you start opening up the machine and saying, "Oh, that's an ITW. That's an ITW."
Yeah, or like Emerson's like that too, where it's like they make the InSinkerator, which everyone has one in their home or apartment or any. I mean, for the most part, you can grind up food in your sink in most homes in this day and age. But like you never made that purchase really, but everybody's got one. Those are the kinds of things that are going to start to really pick up because they're going to manufacture them here. We now are getting the steel internally, and all of those things are the flywheel that drives the U.S. economy, where it's like we produce the steel goes into these companies can now make better margins because they're not competing with foreign goods that are being imported. All of those jobs feed back into people who actually live here, who are then paying taxes, who are able to buy homes and stuff and buy more incinerators and more rigid tools and more Hobart equipment for their grocery stores. I mean, it all starts at the beginning, but if you're importing everything, that flywheel is stopped. You're basically just sending dollars out and bringing garbage in.
Well, you bring up the point about them being able to buy more stuff. I mean, Unilever is up 8% pre-market. Coca-Cola is up 4% pre-market. The consumer is a lot more resilient.
Do you think they're up so much because they spun off those ding-dongs Ben and Jerry?
Man, Unilever is a wild. There's some wild names, and so for example, PACCAR, which reported earnings today, the CEO's name is Preston Freight. PACCAR makes freight trucks, and the CFO's name is John Rich.
Let's go.
So actually, sorry, this is CTO, but you get the point. Unilever's an
the
interesting
CFO is
one.
Mr. Computer.
Unilever's an interesting one. Their CEO is Fernando Fernandez.
Oh, let's go.
I don't know about this marketing, but it seems to be working. Again, the stock's up 8%, so who am I to disagree with it? But they have a new strategic initiative called Desire at Scale, and it's powering Unilever's growth through, quote, sassy brands and the frontline machine. Sassy brands are driving growth at Unilever. In beauty and well-being, it's led by Dove. Personal care is led by Dove. It's the best volume quarter at Unilever in over a decade. So Procter & Gamble reports tomorrow. They have a high bar to live up to now after Unilever. I don't know if they're going to be able to, but it does show that if you can get your marketing right and you can get your products right, you can get a lot of sales in this industry right now.
And they spun off Ben and Jerry's, known bad apples.
And then finally, just wanted to make a quick note. Johnson & Johnson has been going back and forth with this talc settlement for the last, no joke, 15 years. Basically, there's a lot of questions. Did talc, was it tainted, number one, and did it with asbestos, and did it cause cancer? They had almost $1 billion settlement, $966 million settlement last year. But they think they've been able to settle the remaining 90,000 cases or thereabouts for $5.5 billion, which would be a massive win for them. They already reserved $11 billion on their balance sheet. So now they got to get people to sign off for it. So they got to get all the plaintiff attorneys to sign off on it. But if they can do that, that's a big win. I do have some skepticism that they'll be able to achieve that. But it's interesting.
I mean, this has been going on forever. I mean, at one point they were talking about creating a sub company, funding it, attaching all of the lawsuits to that sub company, and then
going bankrupt.
Somewhere in like rural Texas where they could try and get away with that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right. It'll be a busy one today. Another busy one tomorrow. Again, a Fed meeting in the afternoon tomorrow. I think Visa reports in the morning. And then in the evening, Meta, Microsoft, I think Starbucks, Qualcomm, Canadian Pacific. Just continues.
It's gonna be a good one.
Yeah.
We'll see how performance is, but it's gonna be an interesting week. Let's strap in, folks.
Have a great day out there. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.